Ubisoft has told the BBC that it's going to be changing how they work with reviewers and gamers in the future. For those of you who are unaware, I've posted up numerous stories on VGN. I've tweeted about it, mentioned it in my Broken Games video, and it's been talked a lot about in the gaming community. The Assassin's Creed Unity launch was pretty much disastrous. There's been numerous bugs and glitches found on all platforms. However, PC users seem to have received the worst copy of the game. So the game suffers from numerous pop-up textures and issues with like low frame rate problems during the gameplay. And again, going back to my Broken Games video, it amazes me how publishers can invest millions of dollars, thousands of man hours, and still release a game that has so many blatant issues. But the bugs and problems with the game are only one part of the story. Probably the most damning part of the story is the decision to place an embargo on Unity reviews until after the game was released. So reviewers, even though they received their copies of the game early, they weren't allowed to actually post up their review of the game until 12 hours after the game had already been released to the public. Now, embargoes are very normal. Almost every game has them. And some publishers will place an embargo date like a day ahead of the launch. Some of them do it the same time as the launch. Some of them do it like a week before the game comes out. And we saw that with like Forza Horizon. We saw it this week with Dragon Age Inquisition. And sometimes you can look at the embargo dates and they kind of give you an idea as to how confident the publisher feels about this particular game. You know, if you've got a publisher saying, hey, go ahead and release your review a week early, that means they probably feel pretty strong and confident about their product. But if you've got a company saying, hey, you can't talk about this game until after the game's already been released to the public, that can throw up some warning signs. It doesn't always do that. You know, Wolfenstein, I think they waited until the last minute to post up their reviews, but it ended up being received pretty well. So it's not always a level to like look at, but sometimes it is. And in this case, it does appear that the reviews were held back in order to make sure that as many people went out and bought the game before hearing about all the issues. Now, some people may say, well, we need to go after embargoes. We need to make sure that these companies don't place any embargoes on reviewers and all that. And it really, I understand the point of the embargo because, I mean, we live in a day and age where everybody wants to be the first one up with their content. So you want to be the first to write up a review or whatever else. And if you do that, and you just let people join up and write a review the same day as you get the game, what you're going to do is have people who will run through the game as fast as possible. They won't experience hardly anything about the game, and they're just wanting to make sure that they get the hits and clicks on their website because they have one of the first reviews up. So sometimes it's about being first instead of about being right. And so I understand how an embargo can make sure that everybody's kind of on a level playing field. So, okay, you sent out a ton of release copies. Okay, so I'm going to give you 4 or 5 days to play the game or whatever, then post up your review on this particular day. So I understand both sides of it. So I'm not going to be one of those that say we need to do away with embargoes. But definitely when you have an embargo on a game after the release date, that is very anti-consumer. And so they ensured that people who were Assassin's Creed fans ran out and bought the game before they ever heard about any issues with it. And there's really no other way to put it other than it was a really, really shitty move. And it may have helped them sell a few more copies of the game, but definitely the reaction and the backlash from Ubisoft or towards Ubisoft and the franchise is going to do a lot more harm than lower sales numbers would have ever done. So if they would have released the game out early and people would have known about the problems, you probably wouldn't have heard such a backlash. You still would have got backlash, but it wouldn't have been this bad. And speaking of the backlash, a day after Unity released, Ubisoft stock actually dropped by over 9%. And then, of course, you had tons of stories popping up claiming that Ubisoft has now taken over EA as the worst company in regards to how they do business with gamers. So here is how Ubisoft has responded. They say, we are working to adapt our services and communications with consumers accordingly, both by changing the way we work with reviewers and by offering customers open betas and other early access to some of our games, all so that they can have the information they need and want. And we may already start to be seeing the effects of this change. Today, you got to see the Far Cry 4 reviews. They're released now, and the game doesn't come out until Tuesday. Now, that could be just because, you know, they're very confident in the game because the game is receiving a lot of high praise. I can tell you that they've sent me an email saying that they've shipped me a copy of Far Cry 4, so I'll be showing you gameplay of that here in the future. And they do mention in the email that as soon as I get the game, I can post up whatever content that I want. Now, I had told you that I received AC Unity early. I've got it on the Xbox One, and I showed you some of the gameplay for that. Now, all the reviewers have pretty much stated that the Xbox One is actually one of the most stable copies out there. So honestly, I haven't seen as many of the issues that have been seen in the gaming community with Assassin's Creed Unity. You know, I haven't seen the scary disappearing faces or falling through the map or any of that, but I have seen the annoying pop-ups and texture issues and the low frame rates that occurs at times during the gameplay. And it's a really a damn shame because the level of detail is truly remarkable in the game. Some of the buildings just look phenomenal inside, and the city, I think, is like a 1-to-1 ratio of Paris. So you can tell a lot of work went into the design of the game, and it looks beautiful if you're not moving a lot of times. And the cities do really feel alive with so many people in the streets, but it's almost like it's just too much. The game just can't handle it. And I don't know if they need to just dial it back some and pull some of those people out. But, you know, you feel like you're in this world if you're going really slow, but you start running and then you see people popping up in the distance. It really just takes you out of that world. And so I don't know if the game's just poorly optimized or they just were a little over ambitious with it. But either way, it's a disservice to the people who worked hard on creating and designing the game for it to be pushed out whenever it's not ready. And then, of course, it's a definite disservice to the consumer. So Ubisoft has posted up a blog post detailing all the issues with Assassin's Creed Unity. They're promising that they are working on it and they are patching it. They've already actually released one patch, I believe, that went live today or yesterday. You know, honestly, I've enjoyed parts of the game that I've played, but I can't recommend buying any games that have this many issues, at least not until they're sorted out. But hopefully this scenario will serve as a lesson for like the gaming industry as a whole, and other publishers, including Ubisoft, is going to look at this and say, hey, we are not going to go down that road and we're not going to be making the same mistake. And if your game isn't ready, then you better be ready for the backlash. And I'd much rather have a game delayed rather than pushing it out and finishing up development with patches. That is not the way to do it, especially when people have spent their hard-earned money on this game expecting a product that is ready, and this product wasn't. So if you want to read Ubisoft's blog post about the issues they're fixing, I'll leave a link down below. Also, post your thoughts and let me know if you picked up the game. Are you very disappointed in the game, or are you still enjoying it? And how many of you decided not to pick it up based on the reviews? That does it for me, the Red Dragon. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.